The story begins far from the tall walls of the Queen's kingdom, in a place where no one thought fate could build a bridge between two worlds. The human man was not a hero, not a knight, nor someone with riches or fame. He was a traveler, carrying only a small pack on his shoulder and a heart that was not afraid of journeys. His life had always been filled with paths, rivers, and mountains, and he walked without expecting great rewards. Yet life often gives the greatest treasures when one least expects them. On one particular day, after walking for hours through a quiet forest, he reached a valley filled with strange lights. The air was different here. The trees stood taller, their leaves shining like silver under the sun. The birds sang songs unlike any he had heard before. He realized this was not an ordinary place. It was a land that seemed alive with magic. Still, he did not turn back. His curiosity was stronger than fear, and so he kept moving forward. It was then that he first saw her. The princess was not surrounded by guards or carriages, as one might expect. Instead, she stood near a stream, her hands gently touching the water. Her eyes reflected both kindness and a hint of sadness. She looked like someone who carried the weight of responsibility, yet longed for moments of freedom. The man did not know she was royalty at first. To him, she was simply a young woman enjoying a moment of peace. Their meeting happened by accident. As he stepped closer to the stream, a branch cracked under his foot. The princess quickly turned, startled. For a moment, silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of flowing water. The man raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I did not mean to disturb you." Instead of fear, the princess felt curiosity. She had seen many nobles bow before her, many knights kneel at her feet, but she had never heard such a simple and honest voice. His words did not carry formality or greed, only respect. "Who are you?" she asked, stepping closer. "A traveler," he replied. "I go where the road takes me, and today, the road brought me here." She studied him for a while. His clothes were plain, his shoes worn from long walks, but his eyes carried warmth. He was not like the nobles who visited her palace with polished words and heavy promises. He seemed real, almost refreshing. From that day on, their paths began to cross more often. At first, it was short conversations by the stream. He would tell her about the places he had seen, the markets of distant towns, the mountains that touched the clouds, and the villages where people lived simple yet happy lives. In return, she would speak about her world, the duties of a princess, the endless ceremonies, and the expectations that often left her feeling trapped. The more they spoke, the more they understood each other. He admired her strength, hidden beneath her gentle smile. She admired his freedom, his courage to walk alone in unknown lands. Their conversations grew longer, filled with laughter and quiet moments. Slowly, a bond began to form. But bonds in royal lands are rarely hidden for long. Servants whispered when they saw the princess walking near the forest too often. Guards noticed the human traveler lingering nearby. Stories began to spread like fire. Who was this stranger? Why was the princess speaking to him when she had noble suitors waiting for her hand? One evening, as the princess returned to the palace, one of the queen's attendants dared to ask her, "My lady, the people talk. They say you have been seen with someone, a man not of our kind." The princess did not answer, but her silence spoke more than words. The whispers soon reached the queen. She had always been protective of her daughter, knowing the kingdom watched her every move. A princess could not act freely like others. Every choice she made could change the balance of the royal family. The queen grew curious and worried. She wondered who this man was and why her daughter's heart seemed lighter whenever his name was mentioned. Meanwhile, the traveler did not seek fame or recognition. He never asked the princess who she truly was, though he sensed she carried importance. To him, she was not a crown or a title. She was simply someone who understood him, someone who listened when others did not. He valued her laughter, her stories, and her kindness more than anything else. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold, the princess asked him, "Do you not fear being here? My world is not like yours. People will not welcome you easily." He smiled gently. "I do not fear kindness, and I have found kindness in you. If others do not see it, that is their burden to carry, not mine." Those words stayed with her. She had met countless men who promised kingdoms, riches, and protection, but never one who simply promised honesty. For the first time, she felt seen not as a princess, but as a person. As days turned into weeks, the connection between them deepened. Yet, the storm of rumors inside the palace grew stronger. Some nobles even began to complain quietly to the queen, saying it was dangerous for the princess to spend time with a human stranger. The queen decided it was time to know the truth. She ordered her guards to watch closely and confirm who this man was. The news they brought back only puzzled her more. He was not from any nearby land. He carried no royal blood, no title, and no ambition for power. He was just a human traveler. The queen could not understand why her daughter, who had turned down princes and leaders, would spend her days with someone who had nothing to offer. But the princess understood. She did not see him as nothing. She saw him as everything she had been searching for: honesty, freedom, and love without chains. And so the first chapter of their story was written. A traveler who had never planned to stay, and a princess who had never dreamed of such a choice, found each other by chance. What began as quiet conversations near a stream would soon grow into something strong enough to challenge not only the whispers of the court, but also the questions of a queen herself. The days slowly turned into weeks, and the bond between the traveler and the princess grew stronger. At first, it was only short meetings by the stream or walks through the quiet gardens, but soon they began to wait for each other. When the traveler finished his long walks through the valley, he would return to the same spot, knowing she might be there. And when the princess finished her duties in the palace, she would secretly find her way to the forest, her heart hoping he had not yet left. Their conversations were not always about great matters. Sometimes they spoke of simple things: how the sky looked brighter after rain, how the sound of rushing water could calm even the heaviest heart, or how the stars seemed to tell stories if one gazed long enough. The princess, who had grown up with rules, expectations, and endless lessons in the palace, found peace in these simple talks. For the first time in her life, she could be herself without fear of judgment. The traveler, too, found something new. He had wandered many places, but in his heart there had always been a quiet emptiness, like a song without music. Meeting her filled that emptiness with warmth. He admired her kindness, the way she spoke with care, the way her laughter carried hope. He began to realize that his steps, which had always led him forward, now had a reason to pause. Yet the world around them was not blind. Servants, guards, and even villagers noticed the closeness between the princess and the stranger. Whispers spread quickly, sometimes like soft winds, other times like storms. "Why does the princess smile more these days?" one maid asked another. "They say a man from another world walks beside her," answered the other in hushed tones. "And what kind of man is he?" the first asked, her eyes wide. "They say he is human. Nothing more than a traveler with no name and no crown." Though the whispers were quiet, they reached far, until even the nobles began to talk. Some shook their heads, saying the princess was foolish to waste her time. Others were more cautious, fearing that such a bond could weaken the honor of the royal family. The princess, however, did not care for whispers. She felt her heart stronger than it had ever been. She remembered the traveler's words. I do not fear kindness. Those words gave her courage. One evening, as the two walked by the stream, the princess said softly, "Do you know what people say about us?" He looked at her calmly. "I can guess. People always speak when they see something they do not understand. They call you a stranger," she continued. "Some even say I am forgetting who I am." The traveler paused, his eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. "And do you believe them?" he asked gently. "No," she answered firmly, her voice carrying both softness and strength. "I only believe what my heart tells me, and it tells me that you are not just a stranger. You are someone I trust." Her words touched him deeply. He had walked through villages where no one remembered his name. He had crossed mountains where no one cared if he lived or vanished. But here, in the heart of a kingdom where he did not belong, he had found someone who saw him as more than a passing shadow. The bond between them became clear even to those who tried not to notice. Sometimes the princess would return to the palace with her cheeks glowing from laughter. Sometimes the traveler would be seen offering food to children in the nearby village, always with kindness. His actions began to change a few minds. While some still doubted him, others quietly admitted that the princess had chosen someone who held true goodness in his heart. But the queen remained watchful. From her throne, she observed her daughter's happiness with concern. She loved her child dearly and wanted only the best for her. The queen knew that nobles from far lands were waiting to ask for her daughter's hand in marriage. They brought gifts, promises of alliances, and strong armies. Yet none of them had ever made her daughter's eyes shine the way this unknown traveler did. Still, the queen could not understand. She asked herself again and again, why him? Why a human traveler with no crown, no army, no treasure? One night, unable to keep her thoughts silent, the queen spoke to her most trusted advisor. "Tell me, what do you see in this man who walks beside my daughter?" The advisor bowed respectfully and replied, "My queen, he has no riches to show, no land to offer, but he has something rare. Wherever he goes, people feel calm. Even the children in the village smile when he passes. Perhaps that is why the princess is drawn to him. Not because of what he owns, but because of who he is." The queen did not answer immediately. Her heart was torn between duty and love for her child. She knew that a princess was not free like others. Every choice she made could shape the future of the kingdom. Allowing her to follow her heart could mean defying centuries of tradition. Meanwhile, the princess's feelings grew stronger. She found herself waiting eagerly for every meeting, her heart racing when she saw him approach. One day, as they sat beneath the tall trees, she turned to him and asked, "If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?" He thought for a moment, then smiled gently. "I have walked many places, but none of them matter if I walk alone. Where I wish to go now is wherever you are." Her heart trembled at his words. For the first time, she realized that this bond was no longer just friendship. It was something deeper, something that could not be hidden much longer. The days ahead would not be easy. Already the palace buzzed with whispers. Already nobles began to complain. Yet the princess no longer feared what the world would say. She had chosen her path, even if it was one filled with trials. And so their bond grew beyond the borders of titles and traditions. In the eyes of the people, he was still just a human traveler. But in the eyes of the princess, he was more than that. He was the man who made her heart believe in freedom, honesty, and love. Little did they know, this bond would soon be tested in the grand halls of the palace itself, where the queen would finally ask the question that everyone had been waiting to hear. "Who is he?" The days of whispers could not last forever. In the palace, where every step echoed and every word carried weight. Secrets never stayed hidden for long. The queen had heard enough rumors, and her heart no longer allowed her to wait. She had seen her daughter slipping away to the gardens and returning with a glow on her face that no gold or jewel had ever given. She had seen her smile when no one else was around, her eyes holding the kind of light that could not be explained by ordinary reasons. The queen was wise, and she knew there was only one cause: this mysterious human man. One evening, as the sun began to set and painted the sky with shades of orange and purple, the queen sent for her daughter. The royal hall was prepared, the golden lamps lit, and the long carpet stretched across the floor. Servants stood in silence, and a few trusted nobles were allowed to watch. The traveler was brought in too, though he came with no idea of what was to come. He stood quietly near the edge of the hall, his simple clothes looking out of place among the robes of silk and crowns of jewels. The princess entered, her head held high, though inside her heart beat faster than ever before. She knew this moment had been waiting for her, and she could not escape it now. She walked gracefully toward her mother, the queen, whose eyes were calm yet sharp, carrying both the love of a mother and the authority of a ruler. The queen's voice filled the hall, steady and strong. "My daughter," she said, "I have watched you closely. I have heard the voices of my people. They speak of someone who walks beside you, someone who does not belong to this world. Today I ask you not as a queen, but as a mother who deserves the truth." She turned her gaze toward the traveler, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then, with words that cut through the silence, she asked, "Who is he?" The hall grew still. Every servant held their breath. Every noble leaned forward, waiting for the princess's answer. The traveler himself lowered his head, unsure if his presence was a mistake. He feared that his simple truth might cause pain to the one person who had given him joy. The princess looked at her mother, then at the man who stood quietly by her side. Her heart trembled, but her spirit was unshaken. For too long she had hidden her feelings, but no more. She took a step forward, her voice clear though soft. "He is not just a traveler, mother," she said, her eyes shining with courage. "He is not a stranger to me. He is my human husband." Gasps echoed through the hall. Some nobles covered their mouths in shock, others shook their heads in disbelief. The servant's eyes widened, unable to believe the princess had spoken such words so openly. The queen herself did not speak at first. Her face remained calm, though her heart stirred with surprise. The traveler raised his head, his eyes filled with both wonder and worry. He had never expected her to declare their bond in front of everyone, not so boldly, not in the very hall where power and tradition ruled. Yet she had done it. She had chosen honesty over silence, love over fear. The queen finally spoke. Her voice quiet, yet heavy with meaning. "Your husband? You dare to call him such in front of your people? Do you not understand what this means, child? Do you not see the weight of the crown you wear?" The princess did not lower her gaze. "I understand, mother," she said gently, yet firmly. "But I also understand my heart. I did not choose him because of riches, nor because of power. I chose him because he is kind, because he is honest, because he sees me not as a princess, but as a person. That is why I stand by him, not as a secret, but as his wife." The hall grew louder as whispers broke out among the nobles. Some called it madness, others called it shame. A few, however, felt a quiet respect for the courage the princess had shown. To speak such truth in front of the queen required a bravery few could ever find. The queen raised her hand, and the hall fell silent once more. Her eyes turned toward the traveler, who stood still, neither proud nor ashamed, only humble. "And you," she said to him, "what do you say to this?" Do you think yourself worthy of standing beside my daughter, of sharing her name, her life, her future?" The man stepped forward slowly, his heart heavy but his voice steady. "I have no crown to offer," he said. "I have no army, no kingdom, no treasure. I cannot promise power or wealth, but I can promise this. I will never harm her, never leave her, never let her walk alone. I am only a man, yes, but I am a man who loves her with all that I am." His words were not grand, but they were true. They did not sparkle like jewels, but they carried weight like stone. Even those who doubted him felt the honesty in his voice. The queen leaned back on her throne, her mind caught between two worlds. On one side was duty, tradition, and the voice of her people. On the other side was the love in her daughter's eyes, a love that could not be commanded nor erased. At last she said, "Your words are simple, but they are not empty. Still, this matter cannot be decided by feelings alone. You will be tested, not by sword, not by crown, but by the measure of your heart. If you are truly who you say you are, time will prove it." The traveler bowed his head in respect. "I accept, my queen," he said. The princess turned to her mother, her voice softer now. "Mother, I know this is not what you wished for me, but it is what I have chosen. Please, do not see him as only a human. See him as the man who makes me whole." The queen did not reply immediately. Her heart wrestled with emotions too deep for words. Finally, she rose from her throne, her long robes trailing across the floor, and walked past her daughter toward the exit of the hall. Just before leaving, she paused and said quietly, though all could hear, "This matter is not closed, but for now. He will stay." And with that, she left, leaving the hall filled with whispers, questions, and the weight of a future that no one could yet predict. The princess turned toward her husband, her eyes filled with both relief and worry. She knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be filled with trials, not only for him but for her as well. Yet as she held his hand in her own, she knew one thing with certainty. They would face it together. The queen's words echoed in the traveler's heart for many days. This matter is not closed, but for now, he will stay. Those words were both a gift and a warning. He was not thrown out of the kingdom, but neither was he fully accepted. He was like a guest who might be asked to leave at any moment. Life in the palace was not easy for him. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some looked with curiosity, others with coldness, and many with quiet disapproval. Servants whispered when he passed, guards watched him closely, and nobles turned away, pretending not to see him. He was an outsider in every way, and yet he stayed, because of her. The princess never left his side. She knew the weight of the decision she had made when she spoke in front of her mother and the entire hall. She had declared her truth, and now she stood firm by it. Every day she reminded him that he was not alone. When the nobles tried to insult him with sharp words hidden beneath polite smiles, she defended him with grace. When the servants refused to serve him at the royal table, she shared her meal with him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The queen, meanwhile, watched everything. She was a ruler, but she was also a mother, and both roles pulled at her heart. She tested him in quiet ways. She would call for him to help in tasks that were beneath the dignity of nobles, such as helping in the gardens, caring for the sick, or listening to the common people's troubles. She wanted to see if his kindness was only for her daughter, or if it was truly part of who he was. To her surprise, he did not complain. He worked with patience, his hands steady, his words gentle. When the children in the palace gardens fell, while playing, he lifted them kindly, smiling as though they were his own. When the sick and poor came to the palace gates, he shared what little he had without waiting for orders. The queen saw these things, and though she did not speak of them, her heart began to soften ever so slightly. But the nobles were not so forgiving. They saw him as a threat to tradition, a crack in the walls of their world. More than once they gathered in secret, whispering of ways to separate the princess from him. Some suggested that he should be sent away quietly. Others wanted the queen to declare his presence a disgrace. They argued that no kingdom could respect a princess who had chosen a human wanderer as her husband. One day, during a council meeting, one of the oldest nobles stood and addressed the queen with boldness. "My queen," he said, "the people are restless. They see your daughter walking with a man who has no title, no name, no crown. How can the kingdom respect us if we allow this? For the honor of the throne, he must go." The queen listened, silently, her eyes narrowing slightly. She did not reply immediately, but the princess rose from her seat, her voice filled with quiet fire. "You speak of honor," she said, her gaze steady on the noble. "But what is honor without truth? What is respect if it is built on lies? You ask my mother to send him away, but you forget that I am not a child to be guided by whispers. I chose him because of his heart, not his crown, and I will not abandon him now." Her words silenced the room. Some nobles grumbled, others frowned, but none dared to challenge her directly. The queen, however, raised her hand and spoke with calm authority. "Enough. This matter will not be decided in anger or haste. Time will reveal what is true." And so the trials continued. The traveler himself did not seek to fight the nobles with words. Instead, he chose to prove himself through actions. He rose early each morning, walking through the villages near the palace. He helped farmers carry water, taught children simple songs he had learned on his journeys, and listened to the worries of old men who had no one else to hear them. Slowly, the villagers began to see him not as a stranger, but as a friend. They spoke quietly among themselves, saying, "Perhaps the princess was right. He may not wear a crown, but his heart is golden." The queen began to hear these whispers too. The voices of the people mattered to her, for a ruler was nothing without her people. She could not ignore the fact that the man her daughter loved was slowly winning the respect of those who mattered most, the common hearts of the kingdom. But still, doubts remained. The queen worried about the future. She knew her daughter's path would not be easy if she chose to stand beside this man forever. The kingdom would question, the nobles would resist, and other lands might laugh at their union. She asked herself again and again, can love truly be enough to carry the weight of a crown? One evening, as the moon rose high and silver light poured into the palace gardens, the queen called her daughter to her side. They walked together among the flowers, the air filled with the soft sound of night birds. "My child," the queen said softly, "you have always been strong. But strength is not enough to rule a kingdom. You must think of your people, of the legacy you will leave. Are you certain this man with no title and no power can stand beside you in the storms of life?" The princess stopped walking and faced her mother. Her eyes were calm but determined. "Mother," she said, "he is not perfect, but neither am I. He has no crown, but he has a heart that never wavers. That is what I need beside me, not armies or riches. I have seen princes bow before me, but not one of them has seen me as he does. He is not only the man I love, he is the man who gives me the strength to be myself." The queen listened, and though her doubts did not disappear, she could not deny the truth in her daughter's words. She saw the fire in her eyes, the kind of fire that no command could put out. The traveler, unaware of their conversation, stood at the edge of the garden, quietly waiting. When the princess rejoined him, he smiled at her, a smile that carried no fear, no demand, only trust. And in that moment, the queen realized something she had not allowed herself to admit before. Her daughter was no longer the little girl she had raised. She was a woman who had chosen her own path. The queen turned away, her heart heavy with questions, but also touched with a strange peace. She still did not know what the future would hold. But one thing was clear: the bond between her daughter and this human man could not be broken by fear or by whispers. It had already grown roots too deep. The trials were far from over. The kingdom still waited, uncertain, watching every step. The nobles still whispered in their chambers. Yet, the queen knew the greatest test was still to come, the test of acceptance. Time moved slowly in the palace after the princess's declaration. Every step the traveler took was still watched closely, but the whispers in the kingdom began to change. Where once people spoke only with doubt, now there were quiet conversations, filled with curiosity and sometimes even admiration. The villagers who had seen him helping them carried stories back to the city. Soon, the name of the human man was spoken not only as a stranger, but as someone who had shown kindness when no one else had bothered. The queen continued to watch everything. Her heart remained divided. She saw how her daughter stood proudly, beside him, never once wavering. She saw how the man, though burdened by stares and suspicion, never raised his voice in anger, never demanded more than what was given. Instead, he chose patience. He chose respect. And above all, he chose to love the princess in both quiet and open ways, never hiding, never ashamed. Still, the queen needed more. She needed proof not only for herself, but for the kingdom that would one day be in her daughter's hands. And so one morning she called the traveler before her throne. The hall filled with nobles, guards, and servants, all eager to see what would happen. The princess stood to the side, her eyes filled with concern but also with trust. The queen's voice carried across the hall, steady and regal. "You have been here many days," she said, her eyes fixed on him. "You have walked among my people, spoken with my daughter, and declared your heart openly. But words and small acts are not enough to carry the weight of a crown. Today, I will decide if you are worthy to remain." The hall fell silent. The traveler bowed his head respectfully, ready to listen. "I will not test you with swords or battles," the queen continued. "A man's true strength is not only in how he fights, but in how he gives. You say you love my daughter. You say you wish to stand by her. Then prove to me, not with promises, but with action." The traveler nodded. "What must I do, my queen?" The queen thought for a moment, then said, "Go to the villages beyond the palace walls. There you will find people who suffer quietly, people who have been forgotten by wealth and power. Serve them, care for them, and show them who you truly are. If they return to me with hearts that trust you, then I will know you speak the truth." The nobles murmured among themselves, many believing this was an impossible test. They thought the man would fail, that he would grow tired, that the villagers would not accept him. But the princess's heart lifted. She knew that her husband's strength had never been in crowns or armies, it had always been in his heart. Without hesitation, the traveler agreed. And so he left the palace, walking the roads to the farthest villages. Days turned into weeks, and the stories of his deeds began to spread. He helped farmers rebuild their broken fences, carrying heavy wood with his own hands. He stayed with the sick, bringing them water and food, even sitting beside their beds, through the long nights. He taught children simple games to make them smile, reminding them of joy even in times of hardship. He listened to the stories of widows and elders, never rushing, always patient, treating them with respect as though they were his own family. The villagers, at first cautious, soon began to trust him. They saw he did not come with pride, nor with promises of reward. He came with nothing but sincerity, and slowly they began to say, "If this is the man the princess loves, Then perhaps she has chosen well. Back in the palace, the queen received reports from her messengers. Each story carried the same message. The traveler had given without asking, helped without seeking, and loved without limit. Her heart, which had been heavy with doubt, began to lighten. She started to see not just a human traveler, but the man who had stood firmly by her daughter even when the whole world doubted him. Finally, after many weeks, the traveler returned to the palace. His clothes were worn, his hands rough, but his spirit was strong. The princess ran to meet him, her eyes filled with both relief and pride. She held his hands tightly, whispering, "I knew you would return. I knew you would not fail." The queen called for him to stand before the throne once more. The nobles gathered again, some still doubtful, others curious. The hall was filled with anticipation. The queen looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "You have done what I asked. My people speak of you not as a stranger, but as a friend. You have touched their lives not with wealth, but with kindness. You have proven that your heart is true." She then turned to the nobles, her voice stronger. "You say he is not worthy because he wears no crown. But I say to you, what is a crown if the heart beneath it is empty? This man has shown more honor, more loyalty, and more love than many who stand in this hall. He may not have been born among us, but he has become one of us by his deeds." The hall grew silent, the nobles unable to argue. Finally, the queen looked at her daughter. The princess's eyes shone with tears, her hand still holding tightly to her husband's. The queen's gaze softened, and for the first time, a smile touched her lips. "Then so be it," she declared. "He is not only your husband. From this day, he is part of this family, part of this kingdom. May your bond be the example that love can cross all borders, even those of worlds." The hall erupted with mixed voices, some in surprise, some in relief, and many in admiration. The princess, unable to hold back her joy, embraced her husband. For the first time, she felt the weight of fear leave her heart. They had faced the trials together, and now they had won acceptance. From that day forward, the human man was no longer just a traveler. He became a symbol of unity, a reminder that true worth is not found in titles or crowns, but in the strength of one's character. The princess and her husband walked side by side, not as secret lovers, but as a couple whose love had been tested by fire and proven unbreakable. The queen, watching them from her throne, felt peace settle over her heart. She had not only kept her duty as a ruler, but also found a way to honor the truth of her daughter's heart. And in that balance, she saw the beginning of a new chapter for the kingdom, one where love and kindness stood above pride and tradition. And so the story of the princess and her human husband spread far beyond the palace walls. It became a tale told in villages and cities, a tale of courage, patience, and a love that crossed worlds.